5 years into our marriage, Julian partied every night and never came home. I became the laughingstock of all Riverdale. Late one drunken night, his eyes were full of mockery. Then, after the white moonlight of his life returned to the country, I signed the divorce papers he had long since put his name on. Yet at Zhongcheng he knelt in tears, begging me not to leave. I smiled and pulled my hand free. In the dim room, romantic music drifted softly. I had cued it especially for our 5th anniversary, but the man who had sworn this morning he would be back never showed. The glowing phone screen showed a photo of him with another woman, flashier than the last. I couldn't keep from squeezing the pregnancy test. Its sharp edges bit into my palm. After a long moment, I curled my lips in self-mockery and turned the speaker off. 5 years of marriage, and I was Riverdale's famous, unfurling red flag that never falls. Yet I alone refused to read the writing on the wall. I scraped the ice-cold home-cooked food and cake into the trash, then trudged back to the bedroom. I lay on the bed, but sleep stayed away. When the sound of the lock clicked, I rolled over and shut my eyes. Suddenly a nose-curling perfume and thick reek of liquor hit me. My eyes flew open. Julian climbed onto the bed. His big hands groped blindly. I couldn't stop trembling. He crushed his mouth on mine, the sour alcohol turning my stomach. I shoved him off with everything I had and hung over the edge, retching. Before I could catch my breath, my scalp exploded in pain. Ah! I shrieked. Julian's fist was knotted in my hair. I recoiled, tears springing forth. Instead of letting go, he yanked harder, dragging my head toward him. In the mustard glow of the nightlight, I thought I saw him grin, feral, taunting. His voice was soft, his contempt naked. I froze. Tears flooded my eyes in an instant, but before I could speak, his hand slackened and he collapsed against my shoulder, dead drunk. His heavy, liquor-soaked breaths warmed my neck. I hesitated, then closed my eyes in resignation. The tender boy I once knew really was gone. Now the man hated me with every cell of his being. But he was wrong. This marriage wasn't something I stole. It was something I salvaged. Julian and I hadn't always been like this. The Page and Shaw families had been business allies for generations and next-door neighbors to boot. He was the illegitimate son the Pages brought home, while I was the Shaw clan's overlooked second daughter. Above him an older brother groomed since birth to inherit, and above me a sister who excelled at everything, Miranda. She was the flawless firstborn my parents paraded before the world. My only role was to pale beside her. One semester I earned the top score, yet their eyes fixed only on Miranda, who had competed in a provincial dance contest. I was still young then, starving for their approval. Only later did I understand that effort can't rewrite a verdict already carved in stone. While I moped, Julian climbed over the garden wall and gave me a piece of candy. Anytime sadness struck, he produced candy like magic. That day, however, his thin face held more than concern. There was a shy flush. Behind his back he hid a gift he had scraped pennies to buy. He had fallen for my dazzling sister. I swallowed the bitter taste and pointed him toward her. Miranda neither refused nor accepted. She simply kept him dancing on the line. At her graduation gala he collected the tipsy Miranda. In the car they kissed. The next morning he bounded up to me, chattering about marrying her. He was already sketching proposals, but I knew Miranda would never wed him. Or rather, she would never wed a mere illegitimate son. So Miranda coolly threatened to tell Uncle that Julian was harassing her. She had come home with him after midnight. Half the class had seen. To preserve her reputation, his would have to be destroyed. An illegitimate nobody daring to pester the Shaw princess, he'd be driven out like stray dogs. I'll marry him, I said. Besides, doing that would only drive a wedge between the Shaw and Page families. My fists clenched at my sides. It was the first time I had ever voiced an opinion to my parents. When I expected refusal, Miranda chuckled and agreed. At that moment a secret joy bubbled inside me, because I had already fallen for Julian, though I couldn't say when it started. I never imagined the man I ran toward would turn into my nightmare. The next morning when Julian woke, I was carrying in warmed milk. He frowned, shrugging into a shirt one-handed while barking into his phone. He strode out mid-call. I set the glass down and scurried after him, catching his hand. Julian. I lifted my head and met eyes brimming with revulsion. The words jammed in my throat. I let go. Without a backward glance he slammed the door. Unconsciously I tightened my grip on the pregnancy test still in my other hand. Eventually my fingers loosened. Strength gone. I was pregnant. But this child, should it even come into this world? The sudden trill of the phone jerked me back. The screen said, "Mom, Serena, your sister came home yesterday. Come for dinner tonight," she said, voice gentle. Ever since Miranda left the country 5 years ago, they seemed to remember they had another daughter. At first they phoned now and then, but after years of of being overlooked. I couldn't force warmth I didn't feel. I answered softly and hung up. My gaze drifted to the bin I had forgotten to empty. A crazy suspicion seized me. Yesterday, had Julian's no-show and binge drinking been because of Miranda? Had his rushed exit just now been for her as well? But hadn't Miranda married someone else? I bit my lip. I stood at the doorway clutching a stack of vintage vinyl, Mom's passion. I had combed every record shop in Riverdale for them. Before I stepped inside, laughter floated out. I nudged the door open. The convivial air congealed for a heartbeat. Then Julian was crooning comfort to Miranda, who leaned sideways from my vantage. The intimacy unmistakable. Mom and Dad sat opposite, beaming, because to anyone, this had always been my sister's rightful match, hadn't it? My fingers dented the record sleeves as a sardonic smile bent my lips. I had barely laid them on the coffee table before Mom rose. Serena, come, Mom wants to talk. Her gaze slid away as she towed me up the stairs. You've had it rough these years, she sighed, patting my hand. My nose stung. Your sister is divorced, she faltered, squeezing tighter. Anyway, you're unhappy, right? Having found her justification, she straightened. Why not divorce and step aside, she proclaimed, as if stating tomorrow's weather. I stared at the floor. The fragile warmth drained away. For 5 years the whole of Riverdale had watched me grovel in this marriage. And only today, no. Only after Julian's big brother died in that car crash and the bastard heir seized control of Paige, did she notice. So I was only fit for the bastard, and must vacate when he rose. When I stayed silent, her brows puckered. Serena, listen to reason. But I'm pregnant. I cut in, voice flat. She froze. I looked at her through a shimmer of tears. Then get rid of it. The soft suggestion drifted from behind me. Miranda. She stood in a white sundress, serene, as if commenting on pleasant weather. Mom startled, pretending not to hear. You've seen it. Julian doesn't love you, Miranda went on, icy fingers brushing mine. I jerked free, glaring. I would not let her dismiss my child. Know what? He ran into me yesterday. He said nothing, just drank himself senseless. A sneer glinted in her eyes. 5 years. Little sis' way to disgrace the Shaw name. Each word dripped acid. Mom uttered no protest. I bit my lip, palm over my belly, bored by my silence. Miranda suddenly brightened. Serena, want to test something? She cooed, voice laced with temptation. Wary. I stepped back. Her smile widened maniacally. She seized my wrist. I yanked hard. She abruptly released me. Momentum sent me stumbling. The small of my back smashed into the table edge. White-hot pain bent me double. Before I could cry out, Miranda's shrill scream split the air. She tumbled down the stairs, clutching my back. I lurched after her, only to hear Julian's furious roar. Serena. He barreled past, shoving me aside. I crashed to the floor again. Julian. I whispered, voice cracking. His stride faltered. He glanced back, eyes even colder than before. Serena. Thinking of lying to me again? Watching him hurry away with Miranda in his arms, I helplessly reached out and grabbed my mother beside me. It wasn't me. My voice trembled, but to my disbelief, my mother shook off my hand. She avoided my gaze. As my consciousness blurred, I saw her rush after Miranda. I gave a bitter smile. Blood was flowing from my lower body. Before I passed out, my last thought was, forget it. Julian, I let you go. In my fading consciousness, it felt like I'd returned to our newlywed days. Back then Julian was puzzled, but he didn't hate me like this. Ching ching. I know you must have your reasons. I'll wait until you're ready to tell me. On our wedding night, he'd rubbed his brow and said that to me. I kept my head down and said nothing. He sighed and patted my head. I've told you, you're my little sister. He didn't love me, but he respected me, and life was fairly harmonious. Until the second year, when news of Miranda's wedding reached Riverdale. That day I was simmering chicken broth, about to carry it to the study, when I heard her on the phone with him. Yuan Xian. Ching Ching truly likes you. I can't steal my little sister's things. She once said, forget it. You two be happy. Just those 2 sentences. And Julian left the study with an icy face. I stood at the doorway holding the broth like a statue. I didn't understand why Miranda said that, nor why 2 sentences could turn Julian against me. Only later did I realize it was the same reason my parents' eyes had held only Miranda. That night was also the first time Julian came home dead drunk, half asleep. I was woken by him. He took my first time roughly. It hurt so much. I wept and begged him to stop, but he only sneered, his thrusts fiercer. Serena, isn't this exactly what you schemed for? Stop. I bolted upright, cold sweat beading my forehead. But instead of bedroom decor, I saw only white. The sharp smell of antiseptic finally told me I was in the hospital. Instinctively, I touched my now flat stomach, unable to describe what I felt. Awake? A cool male voice spoke. I lifted my head. It was the doctor. Only he stood by my bed. He wore a mask, revealing nothing but alluring peach blossom eyes. A tiny mole sat at the outer corner of one. I stared in a daze. The baby's gone, he said. The baby, gone. As expected. I gave a bitter smile, though I'd foreseen it. Hearing it confirmed still hurt. Your health was already poor. If you don't rest properly now, forget ever having children again. Where's your family? People vanish for something this serious. Your husband. You know any later, and by the end his voice shook with uncontrollable anger. Puzzled, I wondered if doctors nowadays were this conscientious. Yet his words stabbed me. I curled my lips sarcastically. I don't have family. Losing this child meant I'd lost the last family I had in this world. A bleak sorrow filled me. The doctor seemed choked. After a moment he capped his pen. Where do you live? I'll drive you. I looked up, startled, noticing my confusion. He frowned, then yanked off his mask, revealing a familiar handsome face. You've forgotten me too. Serena, keep it out. My gaze slid back to the teardrop mole, and memory flashed. I knew him. Adrian, a high school classmate. I didn't refuse. In my state I couldn't manage alone. He talked plenty along the way, but my mind was chaos and I had no strength to chat. Thanks for your kindness. May good karma follow you, I said once I stepped out. He snorted. I quickly shut the door, but at my doorstep I froze. The soundproofing truly was awful. Before I even opened the door I heard Miranda's coy voice inside. She'd already moved in. I pushed the door open. The sounds died. Julian stood in an apron, spoon-feeding Miranda broth. Seeing me, he instinctively set the bowl down. Miranda pretended to cower behind him. Only then did Julian react, lifting the bowl again and frowning at me. Serena, you dare come back? Looking at his furious face, I burst out laughing. His child had been killed by the woman he was coddling. The more I thought, the funnier it seemed. I laughed harder, bending over. When Julian strode toward me, I stopped, wiping away tears of laughter. I gave him a cold glance. I walked straight to the bedroom, pulled the divorce papers from the nightstand, and signed without hesitation. Just as I reached the doorway, Julian blocked my path, eyes wide. Serena, what game are you playing now? He demanded, snatching the papers. I lifted my suitcase, packing only the most valuable things. The rest, I wanted none of it, but one can't quarrel with money. When I finished, I dragged the case out without looking back. As the door shut, I heard his roar, Serena, don't you dare regret this. My free hand rested on my flat stomach. Regret. I only regretted not leaving sooner. Downstairs, I spotted a familiar car. Adrian. He hadn't left. His car idled outside the Riverside complex. But I wanted no entanglement. I feigned ignorance and looked down to hail a cab. He pulled up, honking insistently. I sighed and got in. Kicked out, he asked leisurely. Sunrise Cove, please. I rolled my eyes. Sunrise Cove, the condo I bought before marriage. Told you Julian's a pretty-faced loser. You tossed a pearl for a fisheye. He sniffed. Clearly, he considered himself the pearl. I was surprised. We hadn't interacted much. He'd been the notorious high school bad boy. I'd been the teacher's pet with thick bangs and huge glasses. Never out of the top 10. Our only real contact had involved Julian. Back then Miranda made Julian fight Adrian. Adrian, short on words, simply beat him up. Furious, I reported Adrian. He earned a major demerit. After my anger cooled, I worried he'd retaliate. Instead, he began bringing me breakfast daily. Apparently, the revenge trend of the time. Date the girl, then dump her. I sighed. Who knew he'd nurse that tiny grudge? Adrian, your lordship, just let me off as a fart, I said helplessly. He suddenly braked. I lurched and banged my head on the glass, rubbing the lump. I glowered. He stared at me. Serena, I never joke about such things, he said softly. His gaze scorched. I jerked my eyes away. I'm serious. Drive or I'm leaving. After a long silence he started the car. As I got out he murmured, I'll prove it to you. My hand paused on the door, but I felt nothing. Sweet talk is cheap. Before Miranda's wedding, Julian had sworn he'd trust me forever. I curved my lips in a sneer. The condo hadn't been lived in for ages. Dust lay thick. I hired a cleaner, then went to a nearby cafe and browsed Yelp's pages. After graduation I'd had an offer from a top overseas design school. For Julian, I'd turned it down. My grades were stellar, yet they were all I had. Unlike Miranda, brilliant in every way. But I see now, As a child I longed for my parents' love. Grown, I chased Julian's. In the end I lost nearly everything. Others' love is moonlight on water. From now on I'll love myself. I also hired a live-in auntie to cook and nurse me back to health. My old life was muck, and I was stuck. Only I could pull myself free. Near midnight my doorbell rang. The auntie wouldn't start until tomorrow. I gripped a baseball bat and peered through the peephole. Julian. His handsome face was flushed. Even through the door the alcohol reeked. Why wasn't he with Miranda at this hour? I turned away. I had no plan to open. He pounded again, shouting my name. Ching ching. Serena. I know you're in there. Are you still mad at me? His yells were loud, and I remembered neighbors on both sides. It was my first night, and I didn't want trouble. I inhaled, swallowed my anger, and opened. Before I could ask what he wanted, he yanked me into a tight hug. I didn't want to wrestle in the hallway. The instant I hesitated, he slipped inside. I shoved him away and slammed the door, but he clung to me again, voice full of grievance. Serena, I miss you. My scalp prickled. I had no idea what he had to feel wronged about. I kicked him hard. He hissed in pain, clutching his leg while he stared at me. His face was flushed with drunken red. I swallowed the curses that welled up. I really shouldn't have let him in, but judging by the present scene, there was no way I could shove him out again. I'd just wait until he sobered up tomorrow and left on his own. Right. I went back to my bedroom and locked the door. The next morning I assumed Julian had already gone, but when I opened the door I found him sitting on the couch. The moment he saw me a flicker of embarrassment crossed his face. Yet within seconds he straightened his spine. Serena, I never intended to marry her, he said, looking at me as if he were yielding. It had nothing to do with me, though. Don't come here again. Next time I'll call the police. I finished speaking coldly and opened the door to signal him to leave. Suddenly he stood up, seized my hand, and forced me to meet his eyes. Serena, come home with me. Stop throwing a tantrum. His brows drew tight together. I was overcome with loathing and tried to pull my hand free, but his strength outmatched mine. We're divorced. I spat in disgust. After a long silence he let out a cold laugh and released my hand. Then why haven't you gone to pick up the certificate? He looked as though he'd cornered proof that I was only sulking. Sure, right now. I blinked. Oh right, there was still the certificate part. Another icy chuckle. He seemed curious how long I could keep up the act. I didn't care. I only wanted every last tie between us severed. Just as I reached the bottom of the stairs, I spotted someone familiar. It was Miranda. She looked pale. What are you doing here? I thought you were supposed to rest. Julian's expression softened as he spoke gently. Seeing the household register in our hands, Miranda seemed to realize something. She gave a soft snort. I pretended not to notice. After getting into the car, Julian fussed over Miranda and kept glancing at me. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Miranda did too. She suddenly leaned toward me, her voice sweet and light, just like the day she'd fallen down the stairs. Serena, you can only pick up the things I've thrown away. But I was no longer the Serena of that time. I sneered. Luckily, I don't keep liking trash forever. Miranda's face stiffened, apparently not expecting such a sharp retort. Recovering, she twisted toward me with a vicious grab. I flung her off in one motion, caught off balance. She toppled half out of the car window. She shrieked, and Julian slammed on the brakes. Serena, first you pushed your sister, now you bully her. He yanked me out of the car and glared, seriously unhinged. I caught sight of the city hall entrance nearby. Exactly. If you don't want me to keep bullying her, hurry up and finalize the divorce. I stared at him in revulsion. Julian clenched his fists, turned, and strode into city hall without hesitation. Even though the divorce had been agreed on, it wasn't until the divorce certificate was actually in my hand that I felt reborn. At that moment, a Hummer rolled up. It was Adrian. He climbed out lazily, pulled off his sunglasses, and revealed that handsome face. His seductive peach blossom eyes shimmered in the sunlight. I clearly saw Miranda's eyes brighten. Well, the Foster family carried far more clout than the Page family. I lowered my gaze, a mocking curve on my lips. Adrian merely spared me a cool glance before walking straight to Miranda. I felt nothing. I simply hailed a cab, anxious to reach the Yelts prep class I'd enrolled in yesterday. Once inside the taxi, I suddenly received a text from Adrian. The real show is about to start. A show. I calmly turned the phone face down and threw myself into Yelt's study. Classes all day. Practice questions all night. I felt as though I'd returned to the grind before the college entrance exam. Actually, I love studying. It's the only thing I'm good at and genuinely enjoy. The days were exhausting, yet I was happier than ever. I no longer hurt because Julian came home late. No longer worried about failing to repay my parents' sudden kindness. It would have been perfect if no one interrupted. One day, day, just as I left the Riverside complex heading for class, Julian blocked my way. He gripped my wrist so hard his eyes were bloodshot. "What is this? Why didn't you tell me?" He produced a pregnancy test with 2 bright bars and demanded an answer. I was dazed. I'd left it in the nightstand drawer in my bedroom. I'd forgotten to toss it when I moved out. Meeting Julian's crimson gaze, I found the irony exquisite. I laughed. "You should know. The day Miranda fell down the stairs. You rammed into me. Have you forgotten?" His face froze. Realization dawned and he stared at me in disbelief. I pulled my hand free and went on. "Remember, you told me not to dream of tricking you ever again." Watching him stand as if struck by lightning, I drew a deep breath, turned, and walked home without hesitation. I didn't feel like class that day. Only after I got back did I notice the heat on my cheeks. Tears streamed down my face. I gave a bitter smile, not because of Julian, but because of the child who'd never been born. That was what I still couldn't get over. With trembling fingers, I touched my flat stomach. Even if the baby had arrived, it would never have had a father's complete love. I curled my lips sarcastically. I glanced at the calendar on the wall, went into the study, and dove back into my books. The YELTS test date was almost here. Time passed quickly. By exam day Julian hadn't come again, which suited me fine. The morning of the test, I sat in the exam hall. I'd practiced those questions thousands of times in recent weeks. The instant my pen touched the paper I realized it truly could change my future. My life didn't need anyone's approval. I could reshape it myself. When I stepped out, I looked at the brilliant sky and smiled from the heart. I could grasp my own fate. A horn blast interrupted my thoughts. It was Adrian, whom I hadn't seen in ages. "Come on, I'll take you to a good show." I was in high spirits. After the exam I felt like relaxing, so I didn't refuse. He drove to his hillside mansion. Bored in the car, I started reciting vocabulary lists in my head. Then I saw Julian storm toward the front door, furious. I glanced at Adrian in bewilderment. He lounged in the driver's seat, a playful smirk on his lips. Isn't the best part watching dogs bite dogs? Once Julian was inside, Adrian opened a surveillance app on his phone. A violent argument erupted on screen. All this time Miranda had been staying in Adrian's mansion. She'd told Adrian everything. The night Julian learned I'd been pregnant, he'd gone home and fought with Miranda. Miranda, already involved with Adrian, couldn't be bothered with Julian and simply moved in with Adrian. The day I finished my exam, Adrian mailed Julian the footage. "You've been lying to me the whole time?" Julian's low roar of restrained rage came through the speakers. The camera quality was excellent. I even caught the fleeting panic on Miranda's face. But the next second she gave a cold laugh. "Lie about what? Wasn't everything just your own wishful thinking?" She wrinkled her nose in disgust. "Get lost. This is trespassing," she blustered. Julian's expression stiffened. He seized her wrist while thrusting his phone at her. A video already playing. It showed Miranda abroad in a private room, raising a glass, smirking. "Julian, that illegitimate nobody. Let me tell you a joke. He used to like me, but how could a loser like him be worthy? I'd planned to ruin him, but my dear little sister said she liked him. Really, isn't she the perfect match for a bastard?" My fists clenched. Adrian sensed my tension and patted my shoulder comfortingly. On screen Miranda let out a mocking laugh. "She only deserves to pick up what I discard," she sneered. A voice off camera interrupted her. "A few days ago the Page family announced their new heir, Julian." Miranda's face froze. Then she curved her lips and tossed back the drink. "So what? Watch, someone like him. I only need to crook my finger. Better worry about your own marriage. Adam seems pretty cozy with Arya these days," the person jabbed. The clip ended. Miranda lunged like a maniac, trying to snatch Julian's phone. "Where did you get that? Where?" she shrieked. Julian's hand snapped around her throat, his face dark. "So what really happened back then? You claimed she drove you away." Miranda struggled, but she was no match for his strength. Suddenly she laughed, low and hoarse, tears leaking from her eyes. "Who are you putting on this devoted act for? The one who ignored her for 5 years. The one who killed the baby, that was you, wasn't it?" Seeing the loathing in Julian's eyes, Miranda seemed to snap. Her voice turned shrill. "Julian, people climb toward higher ground. Water flows downward, that's eternal law. Back then the fact that you even got to kiss me was the honor of a worthless dog like you." She looked demented. Julian's grip tightened. When she began to choke he suddenly slackened his hold and flung her aside. "Don't mention it again. You make me sick." "Higher ground, huh?" Julian sneered, leaning close. "Know who gave me this?" "Your higher ground, Adrian." Miranda froze, then glared, clawing at Julian's pant leg. "Impossible. You're lying," she howled. Julian kicked her away viciously, then clamped his hand around her neck once more. "I'll win Serena back, and we'll have another child. As for you and the Shaw family, just wait and see." I stared at the screen. Julian, speechless. When I heard that, I couldn't take it anymore. I shoved my phone away. Suddenly everything made sense. My parents didn't deserve to be called parents at all. Adrian gave a soft laugh and turned off the phone. Wait, he's here, he murmured. I lifted my eyes and followed his gaze to Julian, who was walking out of the hillside Rolls-Royce mansion. Adrian pulled me from the car and slid an arm around my waist. Julian froze, his face black as thunder, eyes fixed on Adrian's hand. Before he could speak, Miranda ran after him, hair flying. A shoe print marked her white sundress. Red fingerprints blotched her pale neck. The instant she spotted Adrian, her expression twisted. It settled on wounded grievance. She rushed at him. Adrian, I'm so scared. Adrian stepped back. Miranda crashed to the ground, gazing up through tear-filled eyes. What he said, he meant every word. If he jumps whenever you crook your finger, then the two of you deserve each other. Adrian looked down at her, a mocking curve on his lips. Miranda gaped, lifting a hand as if to explain. Suddenly, Julian shoved Adrian aside, caught off balance. Adrian almost fell. Julian grabbed me, eyes burning. Serena, I get it now. I know everything. I was the one at fault. Give me another chance, please. His eyes were rimmed with red. I only found the scene absurd. He clutched my hand so hard it hurt. A moment later, several security guards dragged him and Miranda away. Total strangers, Adrian said, smiling. Miranda fought wildly, but she was no match for the men. Julian didn't resist. He simply stared at me and gave a low laugh. I couldn't be bothered to guess his meaning. I turned to Adrian. Was that fun? Adrian hesitated, then took my hand. I didn't want to hear more excuses. If you won't be straight with me, there's no point in seeing each other. I pulled free. Adrian sighed, yet his calm never wavered. Can't hide anything from you. Get in, we'll talk. I climbed back into his car. Inside, he told me everything. Julian had taken over the Page family only because his big brother had died in a car crash. But what if that crash hadn't been an accident? I turned sharply. Adrian's faint smile didn't reach his eyes. A figure surfaced in my mind. Back then Adrian had been Riverdale's rebel king, but he hadn't been alone. A boy had always cleaned up his messes, polished his schemes. That boy had the same last name, Page. Though I had been married to Julian 5 years, I'd never met anyone else from the Page family. Adrian sighed. I saw tears glint in his eyes. Julian had tampered with his brother's car, causing the crash, but Adrian had spent those years abroad. When he came home, Julian already controlled the Page empire. He refused to buy the freak accident story and traced the sabotage to Julian. I admit, he said quietly, I wanted revenge. My pulse wouldn't settle. And Miranda, he curved his lips. She stretched for a tear above her reach. She should have known the fall would hurt. It had all been his design. Remember, Serena, I told you I never joke about feelings. He stopped at my complex gate and held my gaze. I looked away. Adrian, I'm not in that place. I truly wasn't ready for romance. After a man like Julian, I was halfway to a phobia of the entire gender. When I stepped out, Adrian caught my hand. Can you tell me which country you're headed for? I was silent, then freed my fingers. We'll see. While I waited for scores, I took a solo trip. My life had been fenced in. This was my first glimpse of the wider world. I saw vast seas, cloud-piercing peaks, sun-soaked skies. I met honest, warm locals and greedy hustlers alike. The more I saw, the quieter my heart became. Love shouldn't outweigh everything else. Before you love someone, you must first love yourself. I thought I'd loved Julian, but perhaps I hadn't known what love was. That sweet childhood candy, I'd mistaken it for affection. I blamed no one. I adored the woman I'd become. When I got home, my YELTS results were in, one small goal achieved. I spent the next weeks visiting former tutors to pick schools. My future looked bright. Adrian found me again. Welcome back. Let's grab dinner. He lounged against his car, smiling. He was basically my only friend now. I agreed. Did your plan work? I asked. His chopsticks paused. Then he ate casually. Of course. Your parents came looking, but you were away, he said flatly. They'd looked for me. I lowered my eyes and kept eating. If Adrian had returned for revenge, his methods couldn't be gentle. What help could I give the Shaw businesses anyway? If they needed something, they should ask Julian. Reading my thoughts, Adrian chuckled. The Page company has been bought by the Foster family. His words stirred nothing in me. It all felt galaxies away. I packed up, and on the day my visa cleared, I headed for Jiangcheng. In the crowded terminal, someone seized my arm. I turned. Julian, gaunt and unshaven, suit rumpled. Serena, don't leave. His voice was hoarse. Give me one more chance. Let's build a life. Head bowed. He almost wept. I glanced at my watch and laughed. Julian, you You got exactly what you wanted. Why so unhappy? He said nothing. I shook free and walked to my gate. Suddenly, he dropped to his knees, arms around my legs. Serena. Serena. Security arrived and hauled him off. I watched. Cold, I'd laid the past to rest. But forgiveness wasn't part of the deal. Abroad, I lost myself in new landscapes. Adrian messaged me a news report. Miranda's overseas drug abuse had surfaced. She'd cracked and was now in a psychiatric ward. Julian, meanwhile, had died in a car crash. My parents rang from ever-changing numbers. I never answered. I wired them a set amount each month, then pocketed my phone and photographed the local architecture. Beautiful buildings, but a figure stepped into my frame. I looked up, straight into a pair of seductive, almond-shaped eyes. Long time no see, Serena. I told you, I never joke about these things. Julian, extra chapter. The first time I saw Serena, I'd just been brought back to the Page family. My mother was dead, and they finally claimed me. Yet I counted for nothing beside the perfect heir, hiding in a corner. I heard quiet sobs. I climbed the wall and saw Serena with her head down, crying, thin, dark, a universe away from the other Shaw girl. I gave her a piece of candy. She smiled through tears, ugly. I thought, disgusted. Later I said I liked Miranda. I wasn't sure, but figured if I married her, life in the Page house might hurt less. I caught the hurt in Serena's eyes and ignored it. We can't choose our births, but I refused to stay worthless. So when the bride turned out to be Serena, I was furious. I assumed she was forced and swallowed it. Elite families always crush their lesser pups. Right. Then, on Miranda's wedding day, she rang me in tears. Serena had threatened suicide to marry me. She said, Serena ruined everything. I hung up, seething, facing her. I drowned my rage in liquor. At the bar my brother's friend mocked me further. Back home I vented it all on Serena. When sober I regretted it. Yet I couldn't bow. I pinned every shred of blame on her. I thought I hated her. Only at the end did I realize, in 5 years I'd never once thought of divorce. I had loved her all along. But my wretched inferiority, my dark plots, my vile heart, I was a maggot wrapped around her wings, keeping her from flight. Now she soars, finally free of us all. As I fell, I tasted flight too. In the haze I saw that sniveling girl again. I reached out. If life gave me another shot, and I let go of everything, would our ending change?